Hey Scott, how are you? Good. Okay. Oh, if we want to scoot in. Okay. Mm. For a quorum,
I have not
Say
read
that.
the bylaws
it's
or memorized them.
it's 50 plus 1 and it's 9. So
5.
there's yeah. Well, there's 7, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So we need 4. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, 5. We're good.
Got 5. Yes, I know. Hello. Hello. Yeah.
Fun seeing you out of context.
Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see people regular little.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a person that
Yeah.
does other things.
That's a fun. I like that. Fest or whatever. The recital's always fun to see the kids and see how much they've grown too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was Scarlett's first vocal one, and she was in a terrible mood before that. Recital.
Was she nervous?
Yeah, no, she's just in a crabby,
Yeah.
just in a crabby mood. You know, it happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
So I'm told.
Nice summer.
Yeah. But she did it. Mrs. Lute sent me a picture when they did the group picture, you know.
Hot. Now it's cold. Like, come on,
She's
in the middle.
hilarious. She's
She's
like, I
it
had
doesn't
that.
rain and then
zoom
get
in
real
on
hot.
Scarlett's
Split
face.
those cherries.
Not having any of it.
Oh, no.
She did a good job.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did a good job. She likes singing. Mhm. How was Zora's first year at college? Was her first year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finished
Scott.
Your things look pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh my-
Ups and downs,
Yeah.
learned a lot. Not having siblings was set her up
Yes, we're all here.
learning in those areas.
Yeah,
All here now.
Right.
Oh, Scott. It was good.
And she's on the East Coast, right?
Oh, thank heaven.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Oh, so she's.
Like, she was super
Chair or something.
Yeah, didn't she?
Oh,
know
nice.
those duties?
I started way over on the end.
Actually, speaking of.
It's really like.
I've done that yet.
No, my oldest just graduated from college. So
Congratulations.
yeah. And it wasn't
Short
until probably
meeting
like her
today, right?
junior year of college where she
So-
finally like recognized she went to school in Arizona, but she'd come home, for spring break or whatever. It's probably her junior year. She's like, I just realized that like every time I leave, I just pretty much trash my room, leave it a mess, and then you have to clean it while I'm gone. And I'm like,
About that.
yeah, you're right. I do. She's like, I'm really sorry that
Nice.
A child.
yeah, well, she's
I'm going to call this meeting of the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency Board meeting of June 20th, 2023 to order. It's 5:30 PM. Paula, would you please do the roll call?
Present.
Here.
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 Thank you.
I
Would you all
can't hear.
stand?
I couldn't hear either. Tim and I could hear. Yeah, I'm out at the Shiloh, but I could not hear Paula. And
Oh,
but I
Paula
am
forgot her microphone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm here.
And I'm here, even though it says Teresa, I can't change it.
All
No,
right.
that's fine. We can tell the difference.
Sorry about
Here's
that,
what
guys.
figure.
All right, we'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now is the time for approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Shannon Saldivar.
Second.
Thank you, Scott Heggie. It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 McLaughlin, aye.
Dave Peters said
Any-
aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? The motion passes. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for May 16th. There was one change, moving Dave Peters from present to board absent. Did anyone have any additional changes? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second.
Thank you. You got that, Saldivar and Heggie. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or you can raise your hand online.
Peters will abstain.
McLaughlin,
I think legal suggested I not vote, so I will abstain.
Yes. Okay, so make a note, please, that Mr. Peters is abstaining because he was absent from the meeting.
McLaughlin, aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? There's nobody left. The motion passes. At this time, we will have public comment during this portion of the meeting. Anyone may speak on any subject that does not later appear on the agenda. 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Is there anyone who wishes to speak?
If I may speak very briefly.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan Spots. I just wanted to briefly introduce myself. I'll be joining the city as Economic Development Officer in mid-July and looking forward to it. Currently Capital Projects Community Relations with Columbia Gorge Community College. And I apologize because the college board meeting starts in about a half an hour. We are selecting a new president at that meeting, I've been informed, and I need to attend that because that's my current day job. So I'm going to bow out in about a half hour, but I wanted to stop in and introduce myself.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. We look forward to seeing you in July.
Me too.
All right. Anyone else? I see no other audience members who would like to, who would be speaking. We'll move on to the contract review board actions. That is item 7A on your agenda, contract number CGURA 2023-01, hazardous materials abatement and demolition, Tony's building property. Director Chandler.
Good evening, Joshua Chandler, Community Development Director, Urban Renewal Manager. Dan, you saved me an introduction, but thanks for joining us this evening. Dan's first meeting, second day on the job will be our July meeting, so I'm excited to have him. So this next first item here, long-awaited project. At least I think there's some people that have been sitting on this board definitely longer than I've been in this seat or with the city. So I think it's a long-awaited project. As mentioned, this contract number CGURA 2023-01. This is for the hazardous material abatement and demolition of the Tony's building. The Tony's building is an agency-owned building at 401 to 407 East 2nd Street. It combines about there's 3 storefronts in it, so it's combined. It was modified, I think, in the 70s to combine some of the storefronts together. So we call it the Tony's building. So you'll see throughout the staff report, and when we mention it, we call it the Tony's building, but it very much is essentially 2 buildings and about 3 storefronts. This building was purchased in 2016 by the agency with the hopes of revitalizing a portion of a downtown core. In that time, the agency considered multiple development agreements. However, neither plan fell through. Neither plan was executed. Throughout the course of considering these proposals, there were significant inspections and studies conducted at the building, on the building site, which revealed the high cost to repair and reuse the existing buildings, as well as the significant amount of hazardous material on and within the buildings. At the February 2021 agency board meeting, the board directed staff to pursue the demolition and hazardous material abatement process to make way for a development-ready site downtown. During an extended period of research and preparation, as well as waiting around for a grant from the state of Oregon, which fell through, the agency received assistance through the city's Brownfield Revitalization Program. We were able to conduct a phase 1 environmental assessment and analysis of brownfield cleanup alternatives. That was something that was required with that grant, as well as the removal of an underground, it should say instead of a storage tank, it's an underground oil tank that was below the sidewalk on Federal Street. In addition, the agency commissioned an overall engineering report. Bell Design went through the building and kind of give us their take on it, really looking at the structural integrity of the roof at that time, just to check to see if there's any vulnerability to any collapse. In addition, and overall, there was a basic estimate provided by a contractor to take a look at what it would take to demo the building at that time. This information was used to prepare an invitation to bid, and that invitation was published March 31st of this year. On April 18th, there was a mandatory site visit, pre-bid meeting. This was attended by about 10 contractors. At the time, when it finally went to bid, it actually came down to only 3 bids received. As you can see, those are listed here: Willamette Construction Service, Connell Construction, and Environmental Resources. Following the bid opening, staff reviewed bids received for completeness. And as stated, as stated within the bid documents, the agency may award the entire project or may award pieces of it, depending on for it really in the public's best interest. And as you can see on this list, you'll notice that number 3, environmental resources, and it's italicized. This is actually the lowest bid. However, this only included the abatement of the building, which would then require us to go through a process to get the other half of it done. In reviewing all of the responsive bids, agency staff determined that Connell Construction was the lowest bidder and recommends awarding contract CGURA 2023-01 to an amount not to exceed $422,355. One note is that Environmental Resources, even the lowest bid for the asbestos, was still more expensive than Connell's bid by $72,000. And another little caveat added in here, Connell was actually the contractor that was out here in December 2020 who gave us a bid on the building. So it was nice that they stuck around and they were interested in taking the building down when it got to it. Budget implications: the agency has budgeted $750,000 for this project, therefore having sufficient funds to fund the work. Additional costs will be associated with this, post-demolition archaeological work, as well as some soil sampling that will occur. In addition, I didn't add this in here, but there will be a fence that is installed, and we're probably, we need a pretty sound fence. We don't know how long the lot will be vacant, but we'll make sure that we have a pretty sound fence up there to detract any trespassers. The agency was also, as I mentioned earlier, we went for a grant and were unsuccessful in that for a rather large number. I think it was about $500,000, but we were able to go forward with another grant provided by Business Oregon to the tune of $60,000, and we did sign the contract for that. So hopefully we'll get some final documents that will help very soon. That will help offset these costs. So staff's Staff's recommendation is to authorize the agency manager to enter into contract number CGURA 2023-01 with Connell Construction and Demolition Corp. for Tony's Building Property Hazardous Material Abatement and Demolition in the amount not to exceed $422,355. And I am more than happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Director Chandler?
Josh, what's the time frame for the work to get done?
The contract is drafted right now. We still need to finalize it with their team. October 31st. That's our goal at this time.
Director Hagee?
I have a question on the additional costs for post demolition, archaeological and soil sampling. I'm trying to get a sense of what the overall cost is. So do we have a sense of what that might be?
We don't, because initially what they're going to do is they're going to dig, I think they're 1 meter. It's a 1 meter cube that they're going to dig to find out what they find in the basement of the building. And from there, it could open it up to additional funds that may be incurred with anything that they find in there. If something is found, they reach out to SHPO, get the state archaeologist on board. And then from there, we figure out where we would go. So that one is a little bit of a question mark at this time.
Okay.
And for people, I don't know, maybe you already know this, but there in the past digging downtown, there's been a lot of Chinese artifacts. So we do expect things. And once they start finding things, they have to log everything. So it's an open-ended check for them.
And a little bit of a history when we were initially looking, Stan Tech, the consultant, came out to do the phase 1, and I was speaking with one of their archaeologists then, and that it is known that area of town, there was a lot of rubble and junk that was brought in from other areas. So even though there may be pieces and artifacts found, those artifacts may have come from another site and really brought in to use as cheap fill back in the day initially. But yeah, the building itself is, the building was erected pre-1891. So the basement itself is definitely one of our historic basements, if you will.
Which is part of the reason we initially budgeted the 750,000 was to make sure. we had
Correct.
Ample.
Yeah.
Any other questions? From online, either of you two have questions?
No,
Dan's shaking his head no.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. So if there are no other questions, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to authorize the agency manager to enter into the contract number CGURA 2023-01 with Connell Construction and Demolition Corp. for Tony's Building Property Hazardous Materials Abatement and Demolition in an amount not to exceed $422,355.
I'll second that.
We'll give it to Director Richardson since he hasn't. That's his first for the evening.
Got anything that?
We'll spread the wealth. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay. Next on the agenda is our action item. It's an intergovernmental agreement for Mill Creek Greenway Segment 2.
Great, thank you. So yeah, as mentioned, the next topic here is an intergovernmental agreement for the Mill Creek Greenway Segment 2. This is an agreement between the Urban Renewal Agency and the Parks District. So in order to achieve the goals and the objectives laid out in the plan, in the Urban Renewal Plan, the agency established a list of adopted projects and activities that may be undertaken by the agency or by another agency subject to available funding. One of these projects, further described in section 600 of the plan, is the Mill Creek Greenway property development. This consists of a paved pedestrian path along Mill Creek to be utilized for recreation as a connector for pedestrian and bicycle travel in the city. A full description of that has been included here from the plan. I won't get into that, but it goes into more detail. I believe this is the description of this project was expanded in 2018 through a minor amendment to the plan to just elaborate on it, to provide us some more information on what exactly it is. So this pathway is included in the city's TSP, which was adopted in 2017. It's also included in the Parks District's master plan, which was adopted in 2019. A major portion of this project, segment 2, is located entirely within Thompson Park, which is a district facility. And this is along Mill Creek between West 2nd Street and West 6th Street. It's basically bridge to bridge, if you can imagine that. Following the adoption of the master plan, the district began to explore funding assistance for this project. This resulted in the district pursuing the Oregon Community Paths Grant Program, which was administered by the Oregon Department of Transportation, which included a combination of federal and state funds. The district entered into this contract with ODOT in early 2022 for a total project cost estimate of about $2.9 million. As required by this grant, the district was required to provide a 10.27% match, which is approximately $300,000. So during the October 2020 agency board meeting, a representative from the district requested agency funds to assist with this match request, in addition to their own contribution of $10,000. The agency board unanimously moved to commit this $300,000 for the project, with the understanding that the district would administer the grant and they would also contribute to the overall match as discussed. The $300,000 commitment has been budgeted in both this year's budget as well as last year's budget. On April 18th, ODOT formally requested the district transfer the money for the project, which is $300,352.10. Prior to disbursement of funds, the agency staff drafted this IGA for consideration between the agency and the district, not to exceed $290,352.10, accounting for the previously mentioned commitment in addition to the $10,000 contribution from the district. Budget implications for this. Now, the agency, as I mentioned, has budgeted $300,000. So therefore, there is sufficient funds to provide this match, or to provide this the sufficient funds for this project. It is staff's recommendation to move to authorize the agency manager to enter into this IGA for Mill Creek Greenway Segment 2 between the Urban Renewal Agency and the Parks District in an amount not to exceed $290,352.10. Also included here is an attachment, the IGA, and more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Director Hagee?
I'm not sure it's a question for Scott or Josh, but I'm just curious, like, what is the schedule for this happening? Because I thought, and I could have been dreaming, but I thought we talked about this, that somehow that project got pushed off for 10 years or something. And we didn't think we thought the urban renewal was going to be done by the time the project happened. Was I dreaming about that?
Scott Becker, why don't you go ahead and come on up
Yeah,
to the
we'll have-
microphone?
we'll have
and
Scott.
We'll get you on the record and
I thought it
Yeah.
was just the last.
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Board. I was Scott Baker. I'm the Executive Director for Northern Wasco County Parks and Recreation District, 602 West 2nd Street, the Dalles. So when we got the contract from ODOT back, they have 10 years to complete from the execution of the contract. That execution of the contract was a full almost year after being awarded the grant, because this is the first time that grant program has, we were one of the first funded through this program. They had no process in place. They had to create the process, and they're still in that, creating the process to award the grant, largely through it now. So that does seem like a long time. I think that they were just giving themselves a long time. But I'm encouraged by the fact that they went to go draw down from our match and the match wasn't there. And they quickly sent a letter looking for that. And so how this project works is we put in our collectively our $300,000. They put in there close to 3 million. As they draw from the project, they draw our 10% out throughout. And so they went looking for that and it wasn't there. And that means that they're spending money, which means that they're working on the project. And so it is going forward. They're in the reviewing the engineering work that we had done through KPFF. They're familiar with KPFF. They've worked with them on lots of projects. So we think that that's going to be a little bit on an accelerated timeline. And then they'll be putting the project out to bid. So once the project's out to bid, I don't have a concern that if as long as we get successful bidders, then I think it will go fairly quickly. The concern is that we don't get bidders, and then that's a problem that's now happening statewide. I'm happy to see that you got some bids for that Tony's building.
Director Richardson.
Scott, so clarify this for one and all, who's the project manager? Who controls the bids? Who runs? Is that us? Is that you? Is it ODOT?
So
Is that-
ODOT has assigned a project manager, Paul Singer. He and I meet regularly, and we together manage the project. But from the construction side, it's really ODOT is the builder, and I'm kind of the owner's representative.
So they didn't really, this is just for my clarity. They didn't actually pledge to write us a check to do this project. They pledged to set aside some money they had to fund themselves to do this project on our behalf or in partnership with us.
Only in the project management and review, the contract states that they're going to put the project out to bid. So ODOT will select a qualified contractor, and then they will pay that contractor to do the actual construction work. They are doing in-house the engineering review, and part of that is so that they can write a really good scope of work so that we get the project that we want.
Do you get any, so we have a design, you have a design, there is a design.
Correct.
All right. Presumably the design specs don't change all that much from year to year. It's a trail.
Right.
All right. If they decide to, I don't know, change the color of something or the signage or pavement widths or any of those things, do they just kind of do that and say, here's the trail we're building? Do you have say in that?
We do have say in that, and that's we didn't include in the packet the contract between the Park District and ODOT.
Yeah.
But there is some there's collaboration in that. Most specifically around value engineering. There's an understanding that since we did the cost estimating, the costs have increased.
Yeah.
And so we know that we can't go over the total project budget of 2.9, but we do know that are some areas within the trail that there could be some cost savings realized if needed. That's part of what they're doing in the engineering work now too.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Can't tell. Director McLaughlin, are you trying to take your mute off or are you just moving around?
I'm taking the mute off.
Okay.
I'm ready to take a vote.
Oh, you are? Okay. Well, then would you like to make a motion before you take a vote?
I don't have anything in front of me.
Oh, okay.
So have someone
Let
else and I'll
Stacy
second it.
will make the motion, Director.
All right.
Coburn.
I move to authorize the agency manager to enter into an intergovernmental agreement for Mill Creek Greenway Segment 2 between the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency and the Northern Wasco County Parks and Recreation District in the amount not to exceed $290,352.10.
I would like to second
McLaughlin
that,
will
please.
Second it.
Oh,
I'm going to go ahead and give that to Director McLaughlin.
All right.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
aye.
McLaughlin, aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you guys for
Thank you.
moving this
Exciting
forward.
that it's moving forward. Yes, we're very excited.
It's great news, yeah.
At this time, we're going to do a presentation, basically an urban renewal overview. We have a lot of new members and even for those of us that have been on for a while, it's never bad to have a refresher.
Chair Long,
Yes.
may I ask for your forgiveness, but I I'm attending a Lions banquet in about 4 minutes, so I'm going to have to slip away as well. So I wanted to
Okay.
make sure I was at these votes. And
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
going to go ahead and leave. So thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, thank you. So as mentioned, we've had some new members, but also it's a great idea for, the board to understand why we're here, what we do. And it's urban renewal. And it's, what is urban renewal? By practice, how is urban renewal implemented in the city of the Dalles? So I was going to touch on a couple slides here. I have provided some resources at the end. This will be made available. As we could make it available if you're interested. I guess I wasn't thinking the hyperlinks, but there's a couple attachments that you can go to find out more information about urban renewal if you're interested. So what is urban renewal? It's a financing program that allows cities and counties the use of property tax to facilitate economic growth in designated areas and fund capital projects that would otherwise remain unfunded. This is authorized under Oregon Revised Statute 457. It's used throughout Oregon. I saw a map the other day. It's used all over Oregon. So many different communities are using urban renewal. As cities and counties adopt a plan, that plan has goals and projects in it. And this urban renewal, the funding provides an avenue to fund these projects that are called out in the plan. There's specific mention in statute to address blighted areas. So blighted is actually defined in statute, but can also, what we think of is, worn out buildings, worn out properties. And there's also, underdeveloped, underutilized properties, poor conditions of properties, as well as inadequate infrastructure, all falls under this blighted reference or blighted definition. And it's just a quick acknowledgement of past practices. Urban renewal is not always something that is considered highly among some communities. Urban renewal does have a maybe a darker past. Urban renewal was used in Portland, for instance, in the 50s and the 60s. Urban renewal coupled with eminent domain, redlining, and gentrification resulted in designating blighted areas that really impacted minorities and communities, hit hardest probably in the North Portland area. This has actually resulted in the Oregon Economic Development Association's Urban Renewal Committee in 2019, changed the name to the Tax Increment Financing Committee. So to really hone in on tax increment financing, which is the tool that's used in urban renewal. And also many communities around the state have dropped the name urban renewal altogether and go with just using tax increment financing instead. So just wanted to add that to this as we go on. How does it work? I'll touch on the basics of it, but urban renewal does not increase taxpayers' rates. I think this is something worth pointing out. But it rather reallocates the tax revenues from taxing districts to the urban renewal fund. And under state school fund, school districts have a negligible impact from urban renewal. Ultimately, when there is a district overlaying in a community, the school fund, helps with offsetting taxes that are missed in the process. So the use of tax increment financing, there's two key words, frozen base and increment. So the frozen base is the taxable assessed value prior to the formation of the urban renewal district. The taxing districts will continue throughout the life of a district. The taxing districts will continue to receive the funds that were frozen when the district was established. And the increment is the increased assessed value following the adoption. And this is distributed to the Urban Renewal Fund. This is probably, if you've looked at anything associated with urban renewal, you've probably seen this line graph. This was provided by Elaine Howard Consulting. Elaine Howard and her team are really kind of the go-to when it comes to urban renewal in the state. I asked for permission this morning to use this, just as a heads up. So this gives you an idea. Talk about this frozen base and this increment here in the Dalles. In 1990 is when the area was established. Therefore, the tax base was frozen. So the tax base, the gray area there, the frozen base, that's going to continue to be paid into each of the taxing districts. But throughout, as taxes increase, the area in the blue is what goes to the Urban Renewal Agency to pay for the projects, to fund our projects. So here, 2029, this line signifies when the agency is set to expire. After that time, those hopefully higher taxes will then be released back to the taxing districts. One thing to point out is at times funding can start rather slow for urban renewal. It takes a little bit to build up some momentum. And I was reading someplace that actually an agency may not be able to fund projects for 5 to 10 years as they build up the capital to be able to do that. However, once property tax revenues reach an appropriate amount, the area can use its yearly income to incur debt, which will also help to fund the cost of projects. Therefore, projects may be completed. Projects may have completed all identified, or an agency may have completed all identified projects, but still will collect taxes to pay off the incurred debt. So urban renewal in the Dalles is the Columbia Gateway Urban Renewal Agency, the board that you're all representing. And the mission of the Urban Renewal Agency is to eliminate blight and appreciating property values within the agency's jurisdiction, and in the process, attract aesthetically pleasing, job-producing private investments that will stabilize or increase property values and protect the area's historic places and values. This is a map of the Urban Renewal District. It goes West 2nd Street, a little ways to the west past Weber Street, all the way over to about the roundabout. So the urban renewal, the Columbia Gateway Plan was adopted, therefore establishing the area August 23rd, 1990. This was by ordinance number 90-113. In that time, there have been 16 plan amendments, both minor and substantial plan amendments. And these, the difference between minor and substantial is called out within the plan. Most recently, in April 2018, that was when we actually elaborated on the definition of the Mill Creek Trail as previously discussed. Also to point out a few substantial amendments that have occurred in 1990 and 1998. The area was actually reduced in size 2 different times. And then in 2009, the area was increased, and the maximum, and we also saw an increase in the maximum indebtedness. So the total area as it sits today is 318 acres. So the Urban Renewal Agency Board consists of 9 members, 3 city councilors, 2 citizens, and 1 member from each of the taxing districts: Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue, Northern Wasco County Parks and Rec, Port of the Dalles, and Wasco County. The agency board is supported by Community Development Director, who serves as the agency manager, the Community Development Secretary, the City Attorney, the City Finance Director, and just recently, the Economic Development Officer will assist in their new role. I'm not going to go through all these. I know my rules about too much text on a screen, but I just wanted to show you, kind of give you an example. There are 16 goals within the plan, touching on various things. And then to jump into 19 different projects that are identified in the plan. One thing I wanted to point out, and I've talked about this before, and whether it being in this room or just to people individually, I would like to see at some point soon us working on a new plan amendment to really fresh up our plan and touch on the successes of the agency. And those are highlighted in bold here. So as you can see the list, I mean, ultimately in the 33 years, there has been quite a bit of success in the projects that were called out. Some of these have taken different shapes and paths along the way. For instance, the downtown riverfront access that has morphed into the First Street project. As you can see, this group has been quite successful in the 33 years. So one of the new projects that still needs to be added is the Urban Renewal Incentive Program. This will be added in as with our newest amendment. I won't go into all the details. I think we've discussed it enough over the past few weeks, but just a little bit of an update. We have committed $144,000 for 4 different properties for this project.
And pop quizzy, what are those?
They would be addresses here. Rio Grande Taqueria. Right next the pink building, the Soda Works building was the other. Right across the street from the Dalles Art Center and right next to kind of the courthouse, there is on the corner of 4th and Washington, there is a 2-story commercial building there that they're doing some substantial work to. There's a couple of businesses inside of it. And then the other would be the former Sears building right behind City Hall. So the budget, we just completed our budget, but this is a breakdown, some information regarding the budget. The urban renewal budget is separate from the city's budget. There are 2 separate funds that make up the urban renewal budget, and that's the debt services and capital projects. The beginning balance is $5.4 million, and this takes the debt services fund plus the capital projects fund. And then you have revenues, about 1.7 million, and that is property taxes that we take in. That's that increment that we bring in through tax increment financing, plus interest income, and this is interest that we receive through an interest buy down program that was established a few years back. So when you put those all together, the beginning balance plus the revenues. Total resources and expenditures about 7.1 million. The reason they're the same is because this budget, different from the city budget, this is budgeted to spend every year. This is a breakdown. This is last year's fiscal year 21-22. So the actual I don't have this information readily available. Our financial report comes out at the end of the year, so this will be updated then. But this just gives you an idea of the different taxing jurisdictions, the revenue that goes to the Urban Renewal Agency, and the percentage that each of those contributes to the agency. And then Our bond debt services, this is something pointing out, we talk about this sunsetting, when it's going to sunset. Well, the sunset comes, the idea of the sunset comes because that is when we are going to be paying off all of our, if we follow our debt payment schedule, this is when the outstanding debt will be paid in full. That is July 30th, 2029. So this is a breakdown, the schedule. This is the remaining balance of a $10.2 million bond that was issued in 2009. As you remember, 2009 was one of those substantial amendments that resulted in the increase of maximum indebtedness.
All right. Second, 4 million is what we have left. Is that follow that right?
4 million left to pay. Yep. That's the amount of debt we still have.
That's, in other words, the amount of money that we have to apply to various programs or projects.
No, that's a separate amount, actually. There's yeah, we can get into that a little bit.
And I thought it was like 9 or 10.
Yeah, that's a separate. Yeah, there's quite a few different numbers that work into the makeup of urban renewal.
Thank you.
So basically, we sold bonds to get the amount. And so we're paying our obligation on the bonds. We got all the money up front by selling the bonds to private investors.
And then for some resources, just want to show for additional information, Urban Renewal Agency's webpage. There is the link here. Of course, now that I'm thinking about it, the minutes will be probably a static PDF, so you won't be able to click on them, but there's a couple links here. Urban Renewal webpage, Elaine Howard Consulting, as I mentioned earlier. Elaine is a great resource for urban renewal. Her team has really assisted probably every single agency in the entire state, I would imagine. And then ORS, a link to ORS 457. And that sums up my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thoughts?
I have a thought, not a question.
Okay.
It's one of those easy for me to say, you ought to do this kind of thoughts. What you ought to do. You'd mentioned doing some outreach to highlight projects, the benefits of urban renewal over the years. I think that would be really valuable. I think a map would be really a valuable way, like a call out, but anyway, I'm agreeing with you. I think maybe two, actually, if you were to do like a graphic or a map. One is past projects that urban renewal has been involved with, and one is current, because if you were to take like a 1 year period, say April 23 to April 24, or May, or whatever, a 1 year period, there'd be a lot to call out, right? Small incentive projects like the 4 you were talking about, but really noticeable things like that blasted Soda Works site. That's a real thing. That's renovations that may be less noticeable are also going on with some of these other things, Tony's, et cetera, and some of the other projects that fingers crossed come to fruition in the next or get started in a really public way, hopefully in the next few months.
Yeah, it seems a pretty easy task, really. I think at least keeping up on the urban renewal incentive program might be a good idea to have a map on the website that just shows where things are happening. Yeah, something we could do.
And I want to give some kudos to Director Chandler, because I talked to him about doing a better job of promoting the good things that we're doing. And he did do a press release with a lot of details actually for the Soda Works.
All right.
And
Yep.
you also mentioned to me that you're getting things out in Spanish language, which I think is very important. So, and I know you're handing a lot of that off to the EDO as he comes on, but you've been doing a great job while you're still wearing multiple other hats.
Oh, thank
So,
you. Appreciate it.
Did you have
Had a question?
a thought? Mhm.
So one of the slides you had was a graph early in the presentation. And so obviously that was just kind of a theoretical kind of idea of urban renewal. I'm just curious, like, what ours might actually look like, because it kind of goes back to the question I asked a couple meetings ago about, how do we track how we're doing? Do we track essentially how the tax base is increasing over time from that frozen base? I mean, that's kind of the whole cornerstone of urban renewal, is that you make investments to increase the tax base. And I think it's important that we should know kind of what that looks like. And Jill Amer's here. I don't know if she knows that information either, but I mean, and I don't know if we have it. I guess the question is, do we know what that is? And kind of back to the same question, should we know what that is?
Yeah, we have, I'd have to take a closer look into what we have. I know, as we are required to do a financial report every year, but then, in addition, my predecessor had hired, Tiberius Solutions, which is kind of Elaine Howard's financial arm, if you will, and prepared 2 separate reports for us. Had the conversation with him after the meeting where you mentioned that. He said it's a totally doable thing that we can put together if it's not readily available now. My goal is I'm hoping there's going to be some significant funding that happens this summer. My goal is to come back to you in the winter time to provide us with an update on where we're sitting with our finances. And that could be something we could pull together, hopefully.
Cool.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I think that chart is really important because I mean, it kind of was a little bit optimistic. I mean, it looked a little optimistic because if you look at the area of those things, that suggests that the amount of increased taxes is way more than the frozen base, which I think the chart maybe is a little bit too optimistic, but it would be curious to know kind of how that chart actually looked for us.
Yeah.
And how that takes tax base grow over time.
Sure, Long. So I remember I was at the meeting when the Tiberius consultant team they presented this information to us. And so we have the actual data, the data for which you're asking whether we have a graph for. I know that we have the raw data for it. And it would be current as of the day that they came and did that presentation, at least, which was, I believe, last year. Maybe the year before that. And so that data, that took a long time for them to sort of navigate and work through, but not because it was difficult to find, but just because it was difficult to confirm. And so, yeah, I don't remember that contract when we hired Tiberius to be particularly expensive or cost prohibitive or anything like that. And so, as Josh mentioned, we anticipate some serious funding in the next short term. I think it would be very appropriate after that, and probably during that, maybe something to think about, to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row to see which we do, but just to see sort of what the conversation might look like in a few years. That's sort of when we also sort of nailed down that 2029 date. I believe we hired Tiberius because of your predecessor, Scott, Commissioner Kramer, sort of expressed some doubts and skepticism as to the strengths of urban renewal. And so I believe that consultant and the information that they provided and confirmed for us, and looking at that plan list that Josh just had on the board, there's no doubts in my mind, at least. Urban renewal has been a tremendous success. So.
Great. Any other questions, comments?
I have a comment.
Yes.
That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. I learned a lot and I appreciated the historical information on the front end of the presentation too. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Great. So the only other thing that I just want to highlight is if you're reading about other urban renewal agencies throughout the state, we are one of the only ones where the urban renewal agency is a standalone agency. And that happened back right after I was elected and before I was sworn in 2016. So at that time, there was an urban renewal committee that made recommendations to the city council, and the city council was the actual urban renewal agency. But now we are completely standalone, but obviously we use our funds to hire the city because it makes sense. We coordinate with the transportation plans and the other plans of the city. Just so, sometimes that makes a difference when you're reading stuff in the paper about what other people are doing. So just want to clarify that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was in my notes. It was on one of these notes. I didn't flip the page. Yeah,
There's
so
the
at that
soapbox.
time, 2016, at that time is also then when we basically the advisory committee sunset.
Mhm. Yep. But we're much more streamlined now, and you can tell that we move more quickly. And this board has done a really good job of focusing and helping us spend our money, and I hope we continue to do that. We are down 2 members. Parks and Rec will need to send a new person, but we also need another community member. And Joshua and I and the mayor have been asking lots of different people, and so far we haven't found anyone who is interested. So if you know someone, pass those names on to Joshua, and we'll see. Because it's better to have more minds to weigh in on this, critical thinkers.
I know, I was gonna ask, the Emprendedores group might have somebody who would be interested. I mean, they're business owners downtown, so I'll check in with them.
Which group?
It's like Emprendedoras, like a group of Latina women business owners that are meeting once a month that Director Chandler came and presented to.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that great presentation. And like you said, it will be in the minutes. And that if you probably want the links, I bet Josh would even just send out that one page as not a PDF if you want it. Any staff comments or project updates?
Yeah, I think just we kind of did it at the beginning. Excited to bring on a new economic development officer. I know we've talked about it a lot. It felt like a rumor for a little while that was actually going to happen, but yeah, very excited. July 17th will be Dan's first day. So he's I'm going to throw him right into the fire, the urban renewal fire, and we'll go from there. So really excited to have someone focused on urban renewal. I know, it is as the director overseeing planning and urban renewal at the same time and now adding facilities to it. It's a heavy load. But just really excited to have someone be able to focus on it a little bit more and, pick up maybe some of the loose ends that I wasn't able to get in these past couple of months as the director. So really excited. And other than that, I think I'm also can speak really probably for everybody, really excited about the Tony's project now going forward. My intent is probably to get on the phone with Connell Construction by the end of the week to start setting up basically a pre-construction meeting. I've already let our finance, we have a new facility supervisor, as well as a new development construction inspector. I've already roped them on it. So we're already putting our heads together on shutting the building down, steps to go through to shut the building down, steps we need to go through to shut the street down, sidewalk down. So it's all in fair order. And I'm assuming that in, maybe a couple meetings here in the future while the demo is going on, I think it's definitely something we need to consider on what the next step is, what we want to do with it. I think we should just try to go straight into an RFP after the building's down to try to get a project lined up. I know that, people downtown are excited to see, a better use of that property, but I do know that nobody wants to see a vacant lot right downtown either. We're going to do our best and monitor the fence when it goes up, make sure it's all in good repair. But yeah, it's definitely something that we want to try to fill that hole as soon as we can. So yeah, we're excited to move forward. And that's it.
I will mention that Dan Spots was on city council at the time that that was the urban renewal agency. So he does understand urban renewal too. We're lucky for that. Are there any board member comments or questions? Okay, so seeing none, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Guys.
Hmm.